Everything changes, literally in a matter of seconds in the National Football League. I mean, think about it. A single draft pick, a solitary contract extension, one seemingly minor decision under center. These things can completely alter the trajectory of a franchise for an entire decade. Welcome to NFL Nexus. In this explainer, we are diving deep, and I mean really deep, into the very DNA of the gridiron. But before we unpack the explosive, frankly fascinating roster dynamics that are completely defining the Pittsburgh Steelers' 2026 offseason, do me a favor, make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit that like button on this explainer, and comment your thoughts down below. Oh, and if you truly want to support the deep dives we do here, highly consider becoming a channel member. All right, let's get right into this, because we are looking at an absolute powder keg of a roster in Pittsburgh right now. Look, the 2026 offseason, it isn't just about minor tweaks or bringing in a couple of camp bodies. It is about establishing a definitive, unshakable blueprint for a championship. It's about high-stakes front office gambles, staggering financial commitments, and a looming quarterback succession crisis that honestly has the entire league watching with bated breath. So to really understand this blueprint, we're going to break this down into 4 crucial pillars. First up, we'll debate some historical draft steals. Second, we're looking at the defensive camp winners. Third, the aggressive reloading of the offense. And finally, the absolute tension inside that quarterback room. All right, part 1, debating the draft steals. Did Sports Illustrated actually get this right? You know, the foundation of any true NFL dynasty, it's not built in free agency. It is built in the shadows of the later rounds of the NFL draft. Just recently, a Sports Illustrated article attempted to evaluate the absolute biggest draft steals of the last 25 years. But almost immediately, critics pointed out a massive, glaring oversight. A couple of major franchise-altering Pittsburgh players were inexplicably snubbed. I mean, relegated to mere honorable mentions. And look, this isn't just about bruised egos in the Steel City. It is about fundamentally misunderstanding what value actually means in the National Football League. When you evaluate a draft steal, you absolutely cannot just look at a player's final stat line in a vacuum. You have to look at the exact state of the franchise the very moment they were drafted. You have to look at the positional value and the exact round they were taken. Let's really look at the microscopic details of why these national evaluations completely miss the mark. First off, let's look at the 2024 draft class. The SI article heavily argues that Lad Monkonkey of the Los Angeles Chargers is the premier steal here. And hey, Monkonkey is a phenomenal talent, absolutely. But let's look closely at the context, right? He joined an already established wide receiver group. He was, in many ways, a luxury addition that paid off beautifully. But the counter-argument, the absolute truth hiding in plain sight here, is Zach Frazier. Frazier was selected in the 2nd round. Now, for years prior to his arrival, the Pittsburgh interior offensive line was, frankly, a wasteland of instability. And you have to understand, the center position is the actual heartbeat of the offense. It is the only position, literally the only one other than the quarterback, that touches the football on every single offensive snap. You simply cannot run a functional modern offense if the man snapping the ball is a liability. Frazier didn't just join the team and blend in. He instantly stabilized a long-struggling, highly critical position. He was thrown directly into the fire of the NFL trenches, and he immediately transformed the entire identity of that offensive line. When a 2nd-round pick provides instant franchise-altering stability at the most cerebral position on the line, well, that is the very definition of a massive draft steal. The difference in immediate structural impact between a luxury receiver and a franchise center, it's night and day. And actually, this stark contrast perfectly sets up our second debate, taking us all the way back to 2010. The article crowns Rob Gronkowski as the steal of that year. Now, make no mistake, Gronkowski is an all-time great, a first-ballot Hall of Famer, no doubt. But he was an early 2nd-round pick. He was a highly touted physical freak coming out of college, fully expected to produce at a high level. When a front office drafts a player that high, you are paying a premium draft capital price, and the absolute expectation is that they will be great. But then you have Antonio Brown, a 6th-round pick, an absolute afterthought on draft weekend. Let me put this into perspective. The odds of a 6th-round draft pick even making an active NFL practice squad, let alone an active roster, are statistically microscopic. Yet, he evolved into the undisputed, absolute best wide receiver in football at his absolute peak. We're talking about literal video game numbers. We're talking about a player who absolutely could not be covered week in and week out against the most elite defensive backs on the planet. And yes, the sources clearly note his off-field controversies, and those sideline emotions were heavily documented throughout his career. We all know that. But purely in terms of draft capital, finding a generational, completely unstoppable talent in the 6th round represents a vastly greater return on investment than an early 2nd-round selection. The margin of error in the 6th round is 0. There will likely never be another Antonio Brown found that late in the draft. To say otherwise is to completely rewrite NFL history. Okay, moving on to part 2,
defensive camp winners and how they are securing the core of this franchise.
Let's bring this right back to the present and see how this historical context builds into the reality of today. We are heading into training camp at St. Vincent College in Latrobe, Pennsylvania. The pads are popping, the humidity is completely stifling, and this defense is taking its final terrifying shape. And as the heat rises out there at St. Vincent, so do the financial stakes. $100 million. That is the massive four-year extension given to linebacker Nick Herbig. I really want you to let that staggering number sink in for a moment. You do not hand a player a contract worth up to $100 million if they are just a rotational piece. You do not commit that kind of massive cap space unless you are absolutely, unequivocally certain. This deal is a loud, undeniable statement from the front office. Through OTAs and minicamp, Herbig has looked like an absolute superstar ready to roll. He will no longer be relegated to that third spot on the depth chart. Those shadows, they're gone. The spotlight is blindingly bright now. He has the backing of the entire organization, and he enters this season with 100 million reasons to succeed. The expectations have shifted entirely, from raw potential to absolute, game-wrecking dominance.
But here's the reality of a hard cap league. Every single financial action has an equal and opposite reaction. You simply cannot pay every guy on the roster $100 million. So the crucial point here is exactly how the front office balances the books to build a complete, cohesive defense. Look at this stark contrast on the screen. They paired Herbig's absolute mega deal with an incredibly efficient, highly calculated move in the secondary. They brought in Gateway High School graduate and safety Jaquan Brisker on a one-year, $5 million absolute steal of a contract. This right here, this is exactly how championship rosters are forged in the modern NFL. You need your highly paid superstars, sure, but you also desperately need veterans playing on prove-it deals who can deliver extreme value. Brisker's elite playmaking ability and tight pass coverage will be completely vital as he teams up with Deshaun Elliott in the back end. He isn't the highest paid player in the defensive backfield by a long shot, but honestly, his presence might just be the single most important factor in elevating this defensive unit back to elite top-tier status. Securing a player with that level of game-changing impact for just $5 million, that is absolute front office mastery.
All right, part 3, reloading the offense. The weapons have been significantly upgraded. Flipping over to the other side of the ball, the tension is just as high, if not higher. The front office hasn't just been making minor tweaks to the passing game. They have been working aggressively to completely reshape the whole thing. The modern NFL demands immense firepower, and Pittsburgh, they are stockpiling ammunition. They have fundamentally restructured their wide receiver room from the ground up. You have DK Metcalf, the established, absolutely terrifying WR1. But instead of leaving him on an island to fend for himself against constant double coverage, they went out and executed a blockbuster trade for the highly reliable Michael Pittman Jr. And they didn't even stop there. Knowing you can literally never have enough weapons in today's league, they went into the second round of the 2026 draft and secured Jeremy Bernard. This isn't just a list of names. This is a literal nightmare for opposing defensive coordinators. They have surrounded Metcalf with legitimate, undeniable threats at every single level of the field. The days of a defense simply rolling safety coverage over to one side of the field to shut down the passing game, those days are completely over. And the true impact of these additions becomes incredibly clear when you look at the raw numbers from last year. 850 yards and 6 touchdowns. Those represent DK Metcalf's production from 2025, which was his first season in Pittsburgh. Now, for some receivers in this league, those are solid, very respectable numbers. But for a player of Metcalf's caliber, a physical specimen capable of dominating quite literally any corner in the league, it's barely scratching the surface. So why was his production capped there? Because last year, he was the sole weapon defenses truly had to contain. Every safety shaded his way. Every defensive game plan was built specifically to stop him. But now, with Pittman Jr. and Bernard on the field, the pressure is completely off. The defense has to pick its poison. You simply cannot double-team everyone. Metcalf is now perfectly positioned, completely unchained from constant, suffocating bracket coverage to violently push for his first 1,000-yard season since 2023. The entire geometry of the football field has just changed in his favor. Finally, part 4, the quarterback room. The great succession plan. We have finally arrived at the absolute apex of the drama. Everything we have discussed today, the dominant defense, the aggressive reloading of the weapons, the careful cap space management, it literally all hinges on the most important position in sports. And right now, Pittsburgh has one of the most closely watched, anxiety-inducing quarterback rooms in the entire NFL. Let's break down this timeline because it is a ticking clock. Aaron Rodgers has already declared that 2026 is his final year. He is retiring after this. The starting job for this season is locked in stone. but behind him, it is an absolute dogfight. Look, NFL teams rarely keep 4 quarterbacks on the active roster. Rodgers is obviously safe. Drew Aller, the highly drafted rookie, is safe as a developmental piece strictly for 2027. That leaves a fierce, absolutely zero-sum backup battle brewing right now between Mason Rudolph and Will Howard. Rudolph is a seasoned veteran in the final year of his contract, and he is fighting for his NFL life. And Howard was looking like he might legitimately compete for the starting job before Rodgers shockingly re-signed. Now, Howard is fighting just to stay on the roster. It is a brutal reality of the business. One wrong step in training camp, one bad read in a meaningless preseason game, and your entire career trajectory violently alters. But interestingly enough, Will Howard is not fighting alone in the court of public opinion. He actually has some major, heavy-hitting advocates in his corner. Listen to this quote from John Gruden. He has the it factor. Very good charisma, smart, great leader. He's got that winning aura that I think a lot of people covet. Gruden worked really closely with Howard before the 2025 draft, putting him on the whiteboard in the classroom, testing him on the field, and was thoroughly, completely impressed by his football IQ. But it's not just Gruden saying this. Mike McCarthy has spoken about Howard in the exact same glowing terms. And why does that matter? Because McCarthy and Gruden coached together at Pittsburgh way back in 1991. They share a deep, fundamental football philosophy about what it actually takes to win in this brutal league. When 2 Super Bowl winning head coaches point at a young quarterback and independently say he has the elusive it factor, front offices listen. This high praise from respected offensive minds might just give Howard the microscopic edge he needs in this desperate, incredibly high-stakes battle for the backup job.
But look, all the praise in the world means absolutely nothing if you can't execute when the stadium lights come on. Before we can even begin to talk about Will Howard battling Drew Aller for the franchise keys in 2027, Howard has to prove he can make the active roster right now. He missed a ton of crucial practice time in 2025. He hasn't taken a truly meaningful snap in a preseason game yet. He is a mystery wrapped in potential, standing right on the edge of a cliff. Which leaves us with the ultimate question as the brutal heat of training camp kicks off. Can Will Howard survive the cut? Can this meticulously crafted roster execute their contender's blueprint? Or will the crushing pressure of expectations fracture them from the inside out? That is what makes this game so incredibly captivating. The stakes could not be higher, and the clock is officially ticking. So what do you think will happen in this quarterback room? Let us know your thoughts down in the comments. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive here at NFL Nexus. Remember to subscribe to the channel, hit that like button on this explainer, and definitely consider becoming a channel member to support this level of intense breakdown. We will see you next time as the dramatic story of the 2026 season continues to unfold.